This episode is a bit of a special one. We're wrapping up our first season, and instead of a single guest, we pulled together some of our favourite moments from the conversations we've had since May. They're the bits that really stuck with us, plus a few outtakes that didn't make it into the main episodes, but were too good to leave on the cutting room floor. We just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who came on the show. When we look back across all of these episodes, a few themes keep coming up. One is AI. Not as a magic fix, but as a tool. The people doing this well aren't trying to automate judgment out of hiring. They're using AI to support better decisions, not replace them. Another is how we define success. Rather than about moving faster or hiring more people, our guests told us they define success as making decisions you still feel good about months later and building processes hiring managers can actually trust. And the last one is candidate experience as a signal of culture, priorities, and how much the organization genuinely cares about the people going through the process. We're really excited to come back in the new year with more conversations like these, honest, curious, and grounded in what hiring really looks like in practice. Thanks for listening and enjoy the episode.
So going back to the very beginning of your career, and I didn't know this about you, but before moving into talent acquisition, you worked in store where you managed retail teams. So how would you say that that hands-on experience has shaped the way that you think about assessments today, especially when it comes to driving adoption amongst hiring managers who perhaps don't live and breathe TA science in the way that you might do every day?
Kind of reflecting on that, I think the first point I would make is I think managers are very time poor in those environments. So if I go back to my time there, you're very much thinking, I've got 20 pages of delivery, I've got these tasks to do throughout the day. So your mind is typically on those are the things I need to do by X point of the day and my team need to do. So when you're taking time out to go, I need to interview people, I need to do this role play with them, or whatever it is you might be doing in store, that feels like a distraction quite often from what you really need to do on that day, and it adds to your day. So I think there's an element for me there about how do you embed the process, make it feel slick, make it feel valuable, but they're going, okay, actually I'm seeing enough of this person to know if they're right for my role or not. I think the other bit that I think applies, and I wouldn't say that I've learned this a little bit, I think, from those areas, but also more broadly, we've got some great teams in the business here that do that. Just thinking about it being a great product, but actually if you've got a great product that managers can relate to in terms of like, I can really see the value of how I'm understanding this person, their skills, what they're going to bring to the role, people are going to want to use it. And I think quite often in HR, we kind of take this perception of going like, well, we've decided this is a process and this is a standard that everybody needs to follow. And we take a bit of a stick approach sometimes, but actually translating that, I think more from a product perspective, like actually, if you've got a great product, people are going to want to use it, right? I think that's one for me. And then the other bit is managers still having ownership of the process from an adoption point of view as well, particularly that kind of final gatekeeping or that final step, TA, we might do all the slick bits up front to go, we want to get you 3 candidates that are all great and you could hire any of them, but you need to make the decision on which one. And the reason I was reflecting on like the ownership piece is I think a lot of the tech and a lot of what we're seeing now is almost like taking some of that ownership away from managers, and then you feel less responsible for your hire. Whereas actually I think if you've made that decision, you feel the sense of ownership to go, okay, I've hired this person. I'm also responsible for making sure they've got the right upskilling and they have the right onboarding journey, rather than going, that team gave us that person, this because their assessment tool doesn't work, and you feel less ownership of that decision. So that'd be my third point, really.
What does good science look like in a commercial setting, and how do you protect that in the face of competing pressures? For example, candidate experience being one of them.
Well, I think you've got to set some rules for yourself and your organisation about how you want to behave. And I've got some sound bites. I've used these inside my organisation in the past, so my team will be familiar with these. But I really like them because they very quickly get to the heart of that balance that you need to make between assessment science and commercial in a commercial setting. And it is a trade-off. I get that. I do get that because everything's a trade-off in life, but particularly in technology, you are always offsetting those two things. The 3 things that I always ask the team to focus on are rigor with relevance, data with dignity, and science with scalability. If you can get those three things in balance, you're well on the way to absolutely, serving both constituencies that you need to in terms of the good science and the commercial balance that you want to achieve with it.
Rigor with relevance, data with dignity, and science with scalability. So all of those feel like those foundational elements of what we do. Is there any tension to achieve those, or what tension is there for your team when they are trying to achieve that with clients? I guess it's things like speed of delivery. Do we have to make compromises to achieve a client deadline? They need something ready by September.
The one thing I won't allow to happen to an organization that I'm leading is for it to be blown off course based on today's wind. If you set a course for where you want to get to, ultimately you could deviate a little bit along the way. There will be nuances that you need and things that you need to take into account, but ultimately don't zigzag your way there. You know where you're going, go there, and the decisions along the way that could distract you and blow you off course, 99 times out of 100, the answer is just no. No, I don't want to do that because I still want to get to here, right? So it's that balance of, so when you're looking at science and scalability, for example, there might be things that are really cool to do, but just don't allow the organization to scale. So they might feel like a really great short-term win, but you just know long-term, it's going to impede the ability of your organization to scale to where it deserves to be.
We're finding this with a feature that we've fairly recently brought out called Integrity Guard. Like with cheating and AI tools, and AI tools completely ubiquitous everywhere. Candidates can do it. Cheating is a contentious topic. Sometimes you think, where's the line between being well prepared or using AI? All of those kinds of things. How can TA teams design their early careers process to minimize cheating, or and to some extent, how do you even define cheating? Whether it's the way that questions are structured, the mix of assessments you use, how you verify responses. What have you found that works for you to sort of satisfy that you're getting genuine, insight into a candidate?
Yeah, it was one that myself and my team, we really had to scratch our heads over this a couple of years ago, because as ChatGPT's AI tools started going up on the rise, which just came out of nowhere, definitely seeing an increase in people using it, and rightly so. Outside of work, inside work, I use it too. We can't shy away from it. I want people that are going to be thinking outside the box to help themselves and make their own lives easier. So for me, in short, it's make it so they don't need to cheat would be my answer. We redesigned the questions to make candidates actually just pause and reflect a little bit before they could answer. Actually, some candidates on their answers recorded to say, that's really made me think a little bit, which I think that's brilliant. So we'd moved away from more competency-based questions, which was, give me an example of a time when, and actually you could throw that into ChatGPT. We could quite clearly see that their eyes were reading from the screen on the answer on another browser. It wasn't getting the best out of people. When we really looked at what are we looking for in people, it's that authenticity, which I think is an easy word to throw around, but really when people have just graduated or they're just leaving school or college, it's all about potential, isn't it? Let's be honest. So we need to understand from them what things get them excited, what's really important to them as a person. So we found some real success of that. That was just an idea I had, and I said, let's try it and see how it works. And I'm pleased to say we're doing it for the second year this year running, that we've tweaked the questions again a little bit. But we ask things, happy to share, but we ask questions now that are more lessons learned kind of style questions, or people that inspire you, so we can really dig into people and the things that they value and are important to them. For me, that's far more important, and it gives you a true reflection of the person than a very scripted answer. Right. I think, Caroline, you mentioned there before, there's a difference between over-prepared and preparing enough. With JCB, you can Google searches and you'll get the same sort of first page on Google every time. We were finding that. So we had to do something quite drastic to change it. And what we tend to do now is we do still dig into candidates, motivations for wanting to come and work at JCB, of course. But we tend to do that in person, where we can get an assessor that's worked here for some time to talk about their experiences and just bring that to life on a more personal level. So yeah, it's really worked well. So I guess to summarise that answer, it's been really upfront at the front end of the process on the parts where we'd recommend you don't use AI, because we can't be surprised if people, or we can't reject people for using it if we haven't told them it's not okay to use it, because in every other part of the life they probably think it's okay. So I would, for me, I think we've got a responsibility if we're mapping out these processes as businesses. We've got to look at that and be fair to people, because I don't want to reject people for using an initiative, because that will serve them well in a career at JCB for sure.
So how do we build AI that people, i.e. candidates and clients, can actually trust? How do we get to that stage?
I think people are becoming increasingly more comfortable with the idea of AI. It certainly helped that when we think about the use of ChatGPT entering the mainstream, people are accustomed to working with AI. So that builds the trust. I think start with the last thing I said, actually, which was the transparency. Gone are the days where we would just say, trust me, the algorithm knows best. That doesn't work anymore. Candidates want to know what's being measured and why. I think it's kind of like showing your work when you did maths at school. For hiring managers, I think that the important thing is for them to be able to drill down and see why someone was flagged, for example, as a strong fit. So no black boxes. And that over time, I think, builds trust in the system, that you have the ability to fully examine whatever it's doing. I also think consistency is a key element in building trust. So traditional interviews vary widely. We know that. Well-trained interviewers can be more consistent than pretty much anybody else, but nevertheless, it does vary widely. AI in recruitment, if it's done right, evaluates every candidate against the same criteria every time. And this builds a certain amount of fairness over time. And I think the other thing is to give people agency, maybe not the best choice of words, which we're talking about agentic AI, to empower people. So things like candidates can retake assessments if there was a technical issue, or hiring managers can override the AI recommendation. The AI really should feel like a smart assistant, not a dictator. And I think one of the key ways that organizations can help that is to ensure that their policies, their recommendations, their guidelines in an organization see AI as that smart assistant, not as a crutch. You don't want people to become lazy and sort of blindly accept everything that the AI does. So it's a balancing act, I think.
If we fast forward a couple of years, what do you think ROI and assessments will look like? What will organizations be measuring that maybe they aren't today? Or do you think there's some core fundamentals that persist, evergreen?
I do think there's core fundamentals so even if, regardless of what I've just said, time and cost per hire and quality of hire, maybe that's not the language that we'd use with our leadership team. When you boil some of those down, what do they relate to? It's generally efficiency and cost. Now, as business drivers, they're not going anywhere fast. So I think there will always be a requirement and a need to be talking efficiency, cost, and the next one for me is productivity. So we don't talk productivity very much in talent acquisition. It's quite a hard beast to nail down with what we can get our hands on from a data perspective, but productivity is generally king within a business context. So where we can dovetail into a productivity measure or return, more the better, 100%, because that starts to move the needle for a leadership team in respect to talent, in respect to how you assess your talent and bring them through. Like if we can build linkages and start to show a correlation between better assessment predicts better hires, those hires bring more outcomes, higher productivity, generates more output. You're starting to hear language that isn't talent language. This is production language. It's business language. That starts to then drive a totally different conversation, in my opinion. Very tricky with where we sit within the talent kind of process. But so back to the question, I don't think we're losing the cost, time, quality, experience and efficiency stuff, but I think it's wrapped within cost and efficiency. And I think those two, if we can move the conversation into productivity, then things get really interesting. Really interesting.
And have you seen that?
Think about,
Sorry, Caroline, go on.
there you go.
So have you seen that done well? I know we talked about this
No.
as the simple answer.
No, don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of people now on that path thinking this way. And I think from a hiring perspective, which we plug into and do our part, hiring in general, there's more talk now about hiring on time and hiring when needed rather than reducing time to hire. Right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I have a bit of a bugbear with time to hire. I think it's just a vanity metric that was created to help TA teams from 10 years ago sort of explain, we're doing better. Like, time to hire is going down. Hold off. Like, really, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if your time to hire is 30 days or 300 days. What matters is hiring somebody when a business needs it to deliver output, whether that's project or growth or whatever it may be. And we in assessment play a part into that, don't we? So it's how, for us, how do we figure out how we can tell that story through our bit as part of the sort of process chain that helps organizations start to hire people in when they need them.
I think, considering your experience, let's talk red flags. You probably noticed, or your ears pick up with a few certain things during those discovery calls where you think, this project might be heading down a tricky path, or there might be some things for us to carefully navigate here. Like, can you share what those sort of red flags are?
I think usually it's where someone can't articulate what the value is. Why do they want an assessment? I had one early on when I was in-house actually working for an RPO, and we would sort of consult with our clients there, and they would implement, and we would sort of be that middle management piece between a vendor. And I remember a recruitment manager saying to me, we're implementing a video interview assessment, and they were saying, I just want to make the team happier. Okay, well, how do you define that? What does that mean? Just happier, not coming in, not being, not losing recruiters or whatever. It was very wishy-washy, right? So I think there's that. I think when there's a disconnect between the buying team and the delivery team, the operational team, that's a red flag. It's one we can easily overcome, but certainly there's some concerns there where, you've got a very isolated team that are buying something and it's very top down. So I think that's often a concern. I think if you're talking enterprise global, the COE model isn't a red flag, but where you have a COE model that is rolling something out globally, you really need to make sure your change management is thought through. The worst thing anyone hates as a former recruiter, you don't want to feel done to. You don't want to feel like something's being done to you. You've got to use this tool now. And the first thing you hear about this tool is on go live day. So thinking about the comms planning, about the change management, if they haven't thought about that, that's okay. It's an amber flag because we can turn it into a green flag because we can consult and guide them through that process. But again, that's where to that earlier point, if it's all about pace, well, yeah, we need to make sure we've got some leeway for you to do your comms plan right and think about a roadshow, or I used to call it like a movie trailer before the training. So let's go and demo the assessments with all of your recruiters globally. Let's get all the questions out, sniff out any detractors that are very cynical about perhaps an assessment before we get to the training, because you're just not going to get the engagement in training. So I think those are a couple of the pieces. I mean, I've worked with plenty of clients where they just want me to give them logins. When can I get logins? When can I get logins? I haven't even configured it yet. We haven't configured it. We haven't done anything yet. So there's zero value in giving you a login when you don't know how to use it. Again, I'm not going to give you the keys to the car before we've done some driving lessons, right? So those are some flags as well. If they don't appreciate that, hey, we're not doing, a 2-year HR Workday implementation. We're not doing that. Of course we're not. But, even if it's 2 weeks, I still want that discovery mode that you can perhaps kick off in 15 minutes in a kickoff call. We still want to do some of these steps because it means that everyone's going to be happier when we've implemented. You're going to be more successful.
Thanks so much for listening this season. We'll see you in the new year with new episodes and plenty more conversations worth having.